Chris Lado. Welcome to Lado Files. So 35,000 feet altitudes, you know, if it's something up at above 29,000 feet, then it's higher than the world record for helicopter flight, landing at least.
Yeah, I don't know how long a helicopter can stay up at those altitudes either, but it'd probably take a lot of fuel to get up there. I wonder what the time on station would be because, if we're going to entertain helicopters, as a theory, that helicopter would have to get to those altitudes and then maintain up there longer flight time than an F-18.
Yeah, I think it goes to drone technology, because the only thing I could consider, I guess if you had high winds and you had a helicopter and it was flying exactly into the wind at 120 knots, then that could be a possibility.
Yeah, you'd need something you need a really windy day, but that would still be impossible to be like perfectly still.
Exactly. Yeah. So it just seems like that that is really the one kind of indicator there for me that it's breakthrough. So how do you know that they were there? Like, how can you confirm that it was the same target? Normally it's 20
so
seconds.
We can't. And I've tried to say that before, right? We can. I admit there's very clever ways that perhaps new objects could be traded in and out in a manner that was invisible to us via some technological magic, perhaps. But that's just the reality of the situation because we haven't had eyes on these objects or sensors on these objects for continuous periods of time. That's just not to my knowledge. So to answer your question, we can't. But common sense logic and at this point indicates to us that massive operation to exchange these objects, perhaps from submarines or something, that at this stage in the game has been occurring on a regular basis for almost a decade, starts to kind of lose some of its, loses some of its believability for me to consider that as a viable option. Now, if we zoom way back to 2014, if we look at it in isolation at that point in time and say, how could this be happening? That seems feasible to me. And even us, we weren't willing to say it was unexplainable at that point. We assumed it was some type of drone or something. But fast forward 8 years with all the attention and activity that's gone into it, I think that looking at it under that context makes it hard to think that would be the case.
And also just personally, right? You said you saw these things on the radar, right? You went to intercept it. Either you were waiting, you basically had excess time, essentially, using the gas. So you go and intercept this thing. You can't see anything with your eyes, right? Visually, within safe distance, say a few thousand feet, maybe.
We get 500 feet if we could, but
really,
usually
yeah.
come up low if they were consistent. But I can't speak for everyone, but that was just my experience. And we had more time too, because when we're off the coast of Virginia Beach, where we don't have those fuel concerns, and it might just be a flight. Hey, we need to go figure out some training to do. So go program a few weapons into the jet and go burn an hour of time. So sometimes you have more opportunity to go mess around. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is actually good training, I think, actually. I can't think of much, especially, if you have two people and you're of air-to-air loadout and you want to practice dogfighting or something. But, if you just have some, you're in an air-to-ground loadout or something and you have time, it seems like locking something up, trying to intercept it is good training. I think trying to identify these UAPs could actually be decent training, I guess, is what I'm proposing.
Better than doing it on airlines.
Yeah, exactly. So we already do that. So yeah, and then the video, man, what is your take on the gimbal video, I guess? What do you so what do you have you heard the whole argument on it being the gimbal inside of the targeting pod?
Loosely, I haven't looked into the math, so to speak, but these guys had this thing on their camera systems and on the radar for 5 minutes. They flew out of their way to intercept this.
Yeah,
there was a formation of the fact that this is something in their and they just came from an air-to-air combat flight. You know what I mean? So with a perfectly working system, so it just doesn't make sense to me that this would be some type of weird camera issue that no one had ever seen before. I don't know how else to address that.
Well, I think So for me, like the turning actually is compelling, and the only reason I was able to do it is able to see it. Even the argument was if I covered up, if I covered up the gimbal, basically, if you cover this up, I don't. I wish I could do it somehow. Maybe I can. Yeah, but anyway, if you cover this area up with your hand, and then if you try and see, you feel where you think it would turn. When I raise my hand, I can see that it turned, meaning that there's information in the background. I would try it. I guess just cover up when you get a time on your own. Is you cover up the gimbal with your hand, and then try and guess, without seeing any other indications when it turns. And I was able to tell that, I lift my hand. I'm like, yep, that's where it turns. So I think his argument that it's inside the system, at least just from my opinion, is viable, but it shouldn't look like this anyway. Like it's, the reason I think you and I have never seen this before, it doing something weird like that, is because it shouldn't look like that anyway. Inside of 10 nautical miles, it shouldn't be this weird monocolor, glare thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that, but I think that there's a lot more information that can be gleaned off of the radar data situational awareness page, that provides context of where these aircraft or objects came from, where they originated from, how long our systems were tracking, and that stuff's captured in the system. It might not be processed and presented to a particular pilot, but as the aircraft and the ship sensors are looking out into the sky and doing their job, that information lives in the system. So going forward, I'm not saying it's all safe somewhere, but going forward, that's information that can be gleaned out of the system. We can capture those radar tracks and build an analysis of the objects and their behavior and perhaps their origin, time on station, all these parameters that we care about. That when the government releases these videos, we're never going to get to the bottom of anything. We're just going to churn and churn and churn and churn and churn, and waste time when we could be looking at hard data, which they have but are not releasing, that could provide answers, right? So I see a lot of these kind of video type conversations as pointless, because no image that is ever released from the government will ever be trusted 100% by anyone, especially in this modern age. An image of something is not viable proof of anything.
What do you think
That
of
goes for
multiple
gimbal too,
images?
right? Like, these are exceptional and they're strange, but it doesn't prove anything. It shows that there is something anomalous that needs to be investigated, but it's impossible to draw a conclusion from this.
And do you think they'll ever release more information? I mean, can we get them to release more?
Well,
Like,
that's what I've
what
been
happens
spending the
after
last 5
this?
years trying to do, with building different organizations to apply, be able to provide solutions technologically and scientifically, so that we can investigate this and expand the amount of people that have the willingness to look into this, right? Because if we're not all bound by our fear and our shame of looking into this, then there's a lot more people and power that can be brought into this conversation. And same with the ASA. It's going to be an organization that can push the conversation forward in the Capitol Hill, be able to show that their constituents care about this topic. So those are the kind of tools that I'm using to push this conversation forward, because I truly don't think we're ever going to resolve anything in these images. Frankly, I think it's more of an impetus to push for more data and nothing else. Frankly.